This is a special live program about the latest news that is shaking each of us and all over the world. Operation Rising Lion, Israel's surprise attack on Iran. So first and foremost, our hearts, our souls, our prayers go out to every one of those involved, our holy soldiers, military, who are sacrificing themselves to protect the innocent against our enemies. They should be strong and well and come back safe, unscathed, and may we finally eliminate and eradicate the evil in this world, an evil that attacks and is a threat to all free people, not just in Israel, but all over the world. And that itself deserves tremendous gratitude, that the world should be thanking Israel for protecting every citizen of this earth from the threat of terrorism and all the other overt and covert acts of Iran, the head of the snake. In addition, there's also a prayer for the protection of every man, woman, and child in Eretz Yisrael, in the Holy Land. And again, people all over the world. So that already deserves its own prayers, its own comment. But what really drove me to do this program is I've literally just landed, of all places, from the Holy Land in New York, just a few hours ago. 6 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning, we landed, and in mid-flight we found out that we were the last flight to leave Israel before Ben Gurion Airport was closed down. So besides all these historic events that are taking place, the surreal, and literally I'm still shocked myself that we were in the midst, myself, my dear wife, literally in the middle of these events taking place. So just to give you the timeline, it was around 2 or 3 in the morning, Israel time. We took off after midnight, that we see the news on our phones on the plane that Ben Gurion Airport, of course, was closed, and a strike was made, and the Israeli citizens were being warned that not to go outdoors and to go into shelters, etc., etc. So just that alone is, like hard to put words around it. But the plot thickens, as you shall see. The plot thickens in this way. Why was I in Israel in the first place? I was there at the request of the Argentinian President Javier Milei to join him in his trip that began Monday night, this past Monday night, and was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and here Thursday night we got on flights. I actually was going to the airport from the King David Hotel exactly when he was leaving. But this isn't just random events, as you'll see shortly. President Milei, this was a state visit, so he visited Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu on different occasions, which I'll share momentarily. But as I think back now about all the events this past week, even though none of us were aware in any way, there was no inkling, no hint of what was going to happen, meaning the attack, the Operation Rising Lion. Yet, I look back at it, it seems, again, beyond surreal, and some tremendous lessons that we can learn from it, and even directives on what we should be doing in a critical time like this. So let me just lay it out in the timeline. So I arrived to Israel early Tuesday morning. The President Milei had arrived a few hours earlier and had gone straight to the Kotel, which he always does, to hug the Kotel, to say his prayers. But as he told me later, there were a lot of people there, and he wanted to go back to the Kotel to do it a little more privately, which he would do Thursday evening, as we'll get to. On Tuesday, was pretty much his meeting. He had a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and also a reception at President Herzog's home. On Wednesday, just going through again the timeline, on Wednesday evening, he had an actual, he was at the Knesset itself, where they were honoring him. First time that a president of Argentina ever was invited and spoke at the Knesset. As we know, Argentina had a very difficult relationship and even anti-Semitic relationship for many years, besides harboring Nazis and so on. So he was honored that week. That morning, I had a private meeting with the President Milei, which went for quite a while. Most of it is off the record, but nevertheless, he spoke very openly, and again, just impressed me personally with his profound spirituality, his profound moral clarity and compass. And I asked him this direct question, I say, is there any other allies? He says he doesn't really think there are any other allies besides him, Netanyahu, that have such clarity about the events in the world, about right and wrong, and so on. That meeting that I had with him followed the President Milei earlier, who met with the hostages that were released, the Argentinian hostages that were released last year. And of course, there's still several of them in Gaza, behind the enemy lines. Again, so go back to the timeline. Wednesday evening, he was at the Knesset, I was there. And he had, of course, the head of the Knesset gave his talk. Then Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke beautifully. It's all on the record, you can check it out. Then the head of the opposition, Yair Lapid, spoke. And then President Milei spoke. Now, again, you could say, okay, very nice. But here's the first hint. In the talk Netanyahu gave, he quoted a verse. He even said, I don't know how to translate it into Spanish. I'm sure it will be translated. He quoted a verse which no one at the time knew would become the actual name of the operation that took place last night, Thursday night. He quoted the verse in the Parsha Balak, where Bilam is asked by the archenemy of the Jewish people, Balak, to curse the Jews. But being a prophet, he tells Balak, I can only say what God puts in my mouth. And what words did he put into his mouth? In chapter Balak, in Parsha Balak, which is the verses 23, 24 in the book of Numbers, Hein Kilovi Yokum, Ukari Yisnase. Behold, a people, a nation that rises like a lion and raises itself like a lion, like a lioness, different ways you interpret it. And he quoted it all in context of the common denominator between Israel and Argentina in their passion and their commitment and their courage. That's what he quoted. This is all Wednesday night. Thursday was a very full-packed day. And let me go over again the timeline. Thursday in the morning, the President Milei spoke at the Hebrew University about the economic miracles going on in Argentina. It's a very economic and scientific talk. Then after that, we went to the Museum of Tolerance, where he received the first non-Jew to receive the Genesis Award, or Pras Bereshit, the award, the Bereshit Award. And that was presented to him. Natan Sharansky made some opening remarks, and then they had other dignitaries that were there, including President Herzog, and they awarded him. And from there, we went to the president Milei visited Ir David for a very short moment, and then returned to the hotel, King David, where he stayed. And I should mention his sister Karina, who's his chief of staff, traveled with him as well. And then, approximately 5 p.m., there was the signing of a memorandum between Israel and Argentina, represented by Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Milei standing at the podium, and they signed a memorandum on democracy and freedom. Very dramatic, very high-level security, I should mention as well, due to the people involved. There was obviously a representation from the Argentinian side. There was representation. Quite a few of the Knesset members and the cabinet were there. They spoke. And then, of course, Netanyahu and Milei both shared their words, and then they shared the memorandum. From there, we were quickly whisked out, very small group, to the Kotel Hamaravi, to the Kotel. And this was a high-level security. It was all locked down. The Kotel was completely empty, to the point they built a tent right near the wall where the cars, first President Milei, then Prime Minister Netanyahu, arrived to the wall. And I had the privilege to be there There are pictures and videos if you want to follow up the documentation of it. But again, this isn't just, I'm not just sharing details. I'm directing it in a very focused way. Of course, again, President Milei hugged the wall as he does. Then we all hugged together, said a few prayers both in English, in Spanish, in Hebrew. Then Prime Minister Netanyahu arrived. He, of course, embraced President Milei right there at the wall. I was right there. I'm talking as an eyewitness just hours ago. That's probably less than, what are we talking here? I mean, it's less than 24 hours ago. It was last night, Israel time. And then they both prayed at the wall. And here's the first thing that I don't know was reported at all. I was standing right near Prime Minister Netanyahu. They were saying Kapitel Kuf Chaf Aleph, Psalm 121. And by the verse, Hine Layonu V'Layishin Shomer Yisrael, Netanyahu suddenly said it very loudly, very pronounced. I thought, okay, Yisrael, it says Israel, the name Israel. Shomer Yisrael, we know we need protection. But I had no clue that probably there was a lot more going on in his mind and his heart as he was saying that Hine Layonu V'Layishin, that the God of Israel does not sleep or slumber. The God of Israel that protects Israel, Shomer Yisrael, does not sleep or slumber. Okay, first interesting thing. The next, a few minutes later, Prime Minister Netanyahu asked for a talit, for a prayer shawl, which he put on, and he asked President Milei permission to go over to say a few prayers and to put a note into the wall. And that's what he did. And he said, I'll be back in a few minutes. As he's praying, he's by the wall, all by himself, then he puts the note in. Now we know what the note says. The note says exactly this verse, Hein am kilovi yokum ukari yisnasa. That's the note that he put in. Besamach Dalet, he writes on the note, with God's help, the date in Sivan, and this verse, the same verse he quoted the day before in the Knesset. All this happening at the Western Wall, these two world leaders, President Milei of Argentina, President Netanyahu. I went over closer to Netanyahu. I said, maybe we should invite President Milei with you. For some reason, he had gone off separately. Maybe he just wanted to do it privately, or he didn't want President Milei there, whatever the reason was. So yes, he invited him over, and there they're standing. Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu on a talis. Milei standing near him, holding him. They're both saying the prayer at the wall. Just hours before Israel would launch these attacks. It was moving enough just to see that. But then, as I'm sitting on the plane, 2-3 in the morning, flying back to New York, finding out this one of the last, or if not the late, one of the last flights before the airport closed down. And just remembering a few hours before, standing by the wall, I mean, this is the power of Israel. Besides our tremendously powerful army, we stand and pray to Hashem, be strong like a lion, and with Hashem's help, we prevail. So these are a few connecting dots, and I suddenly thought to myself, what are the chances of the juxtaposition of all these events and me being there? And I'm honestly not interested in talking about myself. I'm just an eyewitness, and I feel the need to share this. And we're talking about history in the making, because, please God, Iran will be eliminated and its regime replaced. That this can change, this could be a change, a game changer for history. A region that was so racked with war for so many years, especially the Muslim and Arab countries against Israel. This goes back all the way to the time of Abraham, where Abraham, Yishmael, the son of Abraham, the forefather and ancestor of the Arab Muslim world, and Isaac, the ancestor and forefather of the Jewish world. The battles began then, talking about thousands of years, and of course through the Middle Ages and in modern times. And this is literally at the cusp of a new change, a new demilitarized change, a new world, Middle East, making peace with Israel. There's so many positive things that can unfold here. We still have to get through it all. But that's what is possible here. And all this coming together at the Western Wall, hours before the attack, based on a pasuk, a verse, of who and who's saying this blessing. Not our friend, our enemy. Bilam was an enemy of the Jewish people. He was more than happy to curse them. But he could not say something God didn't put in his mouth. So the enemy ends up blessing the Jewish people. That here, Behold, a people that rises like a lioness. Am kilovi yokum, ukariyis nasa. And that's the pasuk that Prime Minister Netanyahu quotes in his talk to the Knesset the night before, puts into the wall hours before this launch, this attack, this surprise attack. And I have to tell you, no sign. He was calm. President Milei was calm. No idea what was going on in their minds. All the depth. I mean, standing at the wall is always a good thing, but especially knowing of these events. So that's the extent of what we were dealing with here. Now, some are speculating, of course, that Prime Minister Netanyahu was intentionally, in order to be a surprise attack, all this was going on. I gave him a mazel tov because his son is getting married coming Monday. So everyone thought if anything happens, it'll happen after the wedding. But regardless, and I can't go into their thoughts and the Prime Minister's thoughts, it's not necessarily relevant to us, but all this coming together and literally standing with the talit. Now, one final thing. Then we went on a tour to the tunnels, right near the Kotel that are being dug up. You see Bayit Shiny, even to the point of Bayit Rishon, the first temple. They've already discovered remnants from that. It was a nice long tour. Both Prime Minister Netanyahu together with President Milei, also quite historic. I was thinking of the Jewish people and the non-Jews. Two representations. We have Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi and Antoninus. Kishazek comes and Nofa. Like the story of Yitzchak, his children, Esav and Yaakov. Malum Yemetz, two nations. And then ultimately we're told, V'heisel Hashem Amlucha, that Esav and Yaakov will reconcile and will come, and the Geula will come. Is this a taste, a foretaste? And I'm not suggesting here, this is not a endorsement of Prime Minister Netanyahu or President Milei. This is just sharing and observations. They represent the two great nations and a world with many 70 wolves surrounding and threatening the one lamb. Kivsa achas ben shivim ze'evim. It's quite extraordinary to see such them looking at the destruction, the remnants of the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians, Babylon, Iran, that region. The second temple by the Romans, Edom. Really, so Babylon connected to Yishmael, the Arab Muslim countries, and you have Edom, essentially the ancestors of Esav, whose grandson was Rome, and from there came the Western Christian world. Argentina is a Christian country, a Catholic country. And here you have a friend like President Milei, unbelievable person, which deserves its own discussion of how he supports Jews and how he believes in it, and how he studies Torah every day. Every day the man studies Torah and takes lessons from it, to the point, I don't want to digress too much from the theme that we're discussing, to the point that I sense that when he spoke in the Knesset, he's causing other Knesset members to quote Torah and God. And I should mention the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, mentioned 3 or 4 times. That was also the portrait that President Milei presented to Netanyahu on Tuesday in their meeting. And all of this coming together, a man studying Torah, a non-Jewish person. And his love for Jews in Israel, I can personally testify, is not something that anyone taught him. He just has it in his gut. He has that deep sense of truth and a deep sense that who are the true leaders that we need to look to. He always says, Moshe Rabbeinu and Avraham Avinu, Abraham and Moses. But let's take it back here, and here we are, bringing in Torah, the wall, Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Milei standing at the wall, looking at the wall in awe, with humility, and invoking God's prayers and God's blessings. Hinei layonu v'layishn Shem Yisrael, that the protector of Israel does not sleep or slumber. And the blessing that ultimately our enemy itself gave us, the blessing. Bilam, hein am kilovi yokum. And here I am on a plane thinking about all of this, returning to New York, literally overwhelmed. And it doesn't, obviously the main focus and story should be what is going to be the end here with Iran. But I realize of how much are behind the scenes. I really felt important to share this. The plot thickens even further. Talking about the Torah, and I'm sure President Milei, though I haven't spoken to him since his return, but the end of the tunnels, I noticed something which again struck me. I didn't know why. But suddenly, Prime Minister Netanyahu, it was clear that it was time for him to leave. Okay, he's a prime minister. I'm sure there are many things on his mind. And he left. A few minutes later, I see people saying to President Milei, we need to leave now. It was very clear that there was some time, a deadline. So I thought, there's a flight, and I know that his flight will take off, President Milei's flight, that is, unlike mine. President Milei will take off when he gets there. But there was some some imminence to it, some rush. When I was leaving the hotel to go to the airport, we almost bumped into each other. It was very clear that we have to be leaving then. That was our scheduled flight after midnight. So was it that they were told that they should be leaving? Finally, one more thing. When we came to the airport, strangely, a half hour before the flight was supposed to take off, suddenly one of the crew members is yelling at all the passengers, the gates are closing, the doors are closing right now, which is usually unusual. Usually they have time, a little more time. And it took a half hour till everyone got on. Now, I don't think that they knew what was happening, but maybe they received orders. Just a few little other tidbits. But what I was leading to, as I said, I haven't spoken to President Milei, but I don't think anyone's going to ignore the fact that literally this surprise with this Operation Rising Lion took place literally Erev Shabbos, basically. Thursday night. Going into Friday, into what parsha? Baalei Chesanedus, where you see very openly discussion about how you deal with enemies. Not just in the verse, but a verse that everybody says literally every time we open the Torah ark. Vayhi ben Sei ha'aren. So the pasuk is again in the Sefer Bamidbar. This is in Parsha Ba'aleischa. Yud Lamed Hey 10:35. Vayhi ben Sei ha'aren vayemer Moshe kumu Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha. Translated. When the ark set out, Moshe would say, "Arise, Lord. May your enemies be scattered, and may those who hate you flee from you." Literally, this speaks Pasha. So when the Torah comes out of the ark, it's a form of a journey. Life is a journey. So we say that verse. So the Torah is not just a blueprint for life, it's also a protector. And indeed, when you read the chapter, what does it say? The Jewish people traveled through a very harsh desert, one filled with snakes and scorpions, an arid and lifeless place with many dangers lurking, and that's why the Aaron walked before them that protected them and that eliminated all the enemies like we just read. So whatever shape an enemy takes on, whether it's physical, spiritual, psychological, including the enemies where in this desert lands of the Middle East, with all the dangers, desert literally, but also desert spiritually. And what is the way to conquest, to victory, to protection? The Torah. Standing at the wall, saying verses of the Torah. And indeed, we're told, the Talmud tells us, that these two verses, these are separated from the rest of the Torah with two brackets, two nuns. Inverted nuns, which create like a box, like a bracket. And the Emek HaMelech, one of the great Kabbalists of the 16th, 17th century, writes that anyone who says this verse with proper intention will be protected from all enemies of all sorts. I wrote an article about this probably 16 years ago. That's what he says. And it's a verse in this week's Torah chapter. And one more verse. We're also told in this week's chapter about Aseh lecha shtei chatzetzos. You should craft two trumpets. Trumpets that were used for different calls, and one of them was a call in time of war. Now, a trumpet is a type of weapon. First of all, it arouses the troops and wakes them up and a sense of solidarity, but it also frightens the enemy. That's what trumpets are used for. Yet again in this week's chapter. So it all comes together, it converges together, and it's not about sensationalism. As you know, that's not what I'm into. Finding a hint here, but when you take all these events together, and you see over history, whenever we were faced with enemies, what emerged, that ultimately victory, whether it was the 6-Day War, And it was a combination. It was a combination of Shtei Chatzetzres. The Maggid of Mezrich says Chatzetzres comes from the word Chetzitzura. Chetzitzura means half a shape, two halves. One half is our effort. The other half is God's effort. And together it makes into one surah, one shape, one complete, like soulmates. That it requires our efforts from below. And we see what the Holy Land, the Promised Land, what kind of efforts it makes. The unimaginable power and wisdom and strategy, even going into in this operation and previous operations. But hand in hand, it comes with the power of Hashem from God. And together, we are invincible when you bring those two together. And I saw it with my own eyes standing at the wall just hours before the operation began, with Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Milei, standing at the wall, quietly praying, Prime Minister putting the note into the wall. And with that strength, coupled with the strength from below, our efforts, which is also blessed by God, we have no question that we will be victorious. And not just for the Jewish people in Israel, but as the Medrash says, that if the nations of the world would know the blessings that they receive from the Holy Temple, from Jerusalem, from Israel, instead of attacking it, they would surround it with legions to protect it because of the blessings that they receive. Some are aware and some are not yet aware. President Milei is aware. And he's making many other people aware, including many Jewish people. The time has come that the entire world, the entire nation, all the nations of the world will be aware of the one God. And as was quoted also by the talk in the King David Hotel, when the agreement was signed, that that those that bless the Jews will be blessed. And we know the second half, those that curse the Jews will be cursed. The Jewish people are not just a gift and blessing to each of us and to God, but to the entire world. And hopefully this will be the last frontier, the last stand. Well, this will be recognized by the ancient Babylon, yes, the same Babylon that destroyed the first temple, and by the Romans that destroyed the second temple. They themselves, like Bilam himself, will end up blessing us and being a source of blessing, because they too are blessed when we are blessed, the Jewish people. So may Israel, with Hashem's help, deal with this in the fullest way, with the least amount of any negative experiences. So far, so good, but we know there are challenges ahead. Let this be the final frontier of true shalom in that area, in that peace, true peace in that part of the world, and from there extend to the rest of the world with the Geula Amitis Vashlema, the complete redemption. Thank you all for listening. My honor, my humble honor, to be a part of this. And I still am trying to unwrap it, and I'm sure I'll talk more about this. Everyone have a Shabbat Shalom, a true Shabbos, and we should enter from this Shabbos into Yom Shekule Shabbos, a Menucha L'chai Alamim, a time when the entire world will experience complete rest and complete peace and complete tranquility and harmony. May it be now. Thank you so much.